Welcome, students! Today we will explore the context behind A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Today we will delve into the rich socio-historical context of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol. We'll explore how Dickens's own life experiences, particularly his exposure to poverty, deeply influenced the narrative. We'll discuss the significant themes of poverty and the Industrial Revolution, examining how Dickens critiques the attitudes of the wealthy towards the poor. Additionally, we'll look at how the novella reflects Victorian views on Christmas and how Dickens challenges certain rigid religious practices of his time. Let's begin. Charles Dickens was born into a middle-class family, allowing him the good fortune of attending school, which likely influenced his high regard for education. However, this was short-lived due to his father's financial troubles and substantial debt, leading to his imprisonment. Due to this, Dickens was separated from his family and sent to Warren's blacking factory, where he experienced the harsh working conditions of the poor, profoundly shaping his view of society. However, after 3 years, his father inherited money, allowing Dickens to return to education. Dickens's proximity to workhouses meant he had deep empathy for the working class and their struggles, and was critical of the social class divide. We can often see his sympathy reflected in his novels, as shown in the following quote from A Christmas Carol.
They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty. And Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of the pawnbrokers. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time.
By portraying the Cratchits as happy and content despite their poverty, Dickens challenges the prevailing attitudes of his time, which often viewed the poor as morally deficient or responsible for their own poverty. Dickens's experience as a journalist influenced his desire to inform the public about societal issues in an accessible format through his novel. An optional extension task is to consider how Charles Dickens drew inspiration from his own life to create memorable characters. His own sister Fanny inspired the loving character of Fan, Scrooge's sister, while his nephew Henry, who suffered from an illness, influenced the creation of Tiny Tim. Interestingly, Dickens's father, John Dickens, was a clerk like Bob Cratchit. And the Cratchit household mirrors Dickens's childhood home, explaining the sympathetic and idealized portrayal of the Cratchit family. Tiny Tim is crucial to the story as his frail health and cheerful spirit deeply move Scrooge, helping him develop empathy and compassion. This transformation highlights Dickens's message about the power of love and community. Dickens wrote the novella in a post-Industrial Revolution Victorian society, where poverty was a normal phenomenon, urging collective societal action to address the issue. At the beginning of the novel, 2 charity workers highlight this issue by stating to Scrooge that many thousands are in want of common necessaries, hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts. Despite widespread poverty, many of the wealthy were ignorant or chose to ignore the struggles faced by the working class, influenced by the ideas of economist Thomas Malthus, who believed poverty was an inevitable result of population growth. Scrooge's views on the surplus population reflect this Malthusian perspective. Scrooge's initial apathy towards poverty and the poor was representative of Victorian middle and upper-class consensus that poverty was the fault of the poor. A significant book of the period, Self-Help by Samuel Smiles from 1859, argued that individuals should not rely on external aid, but should improve their situation through hard work and discipline. The overall message was that poor people should not be helped as they should help themselves. Dickens uses Scrooge to critique this perspective, instead portraying the working class as victims of societal failures. The harsh realities of workhouses established by the 1834 New Poor Law exemplify this critique. The law mandated that the poor could only receive aid by entering workhouses, which were essentially dangerous and oppressive institutions. The wealthy, including Scrooge, saw this as a suitable solution, as evidenced by Scrooge's satisfaction that prisons and union workhouses were in full vigor. However, Scrooge fails to realize that the overcrowding of these workhouses highlights the failure of Victorian society to adequately address poverty, rather than a measure of their success. Let's now explore Christmas traditions in the Victorian era. The Victorians are often credited with transforming Christmas into the festive celebration it is today. Before the 19th century, Christmas was hardly observed by businesses and was primarily a religious holiday. This changed in 1848 when the Illustrated London News published a drawing of the royal family around a decorated tree, a tradition from Prince Albert's German childhood. This image popularised Christmas trees among the general population, followed by the tradition of sending Christmas cards, invented by Henry Cole in 1843. While Dickens did not invent the Victorian Christmas, his book, A Christmas Carol, significantly helped popularise its traditions and festivities. Finally, Victorian society had conservative and strict religious expectations, such as Sabbatarianism, which advocated for strict observance of Sunday as a day of rest and worship, with blue laws restricting leisure activities. This often meant that the poor, who worked long hours throughout the week, had very few opportunities for relaxation or enjoyment. Dickens critiqued these religious practices, such as Sabbatarianism, through the character of the Ghost of Christmas Present. Let's now imagine how Charles Dickens would have described his intention to challenge these religious practices.
The ghost carries a torch shaped like a cornucopia to sprinkle water on people, enhancing their enjoyment and dispelling quarrels. By showing the Ghost of Christmas Present, spreading joy, and enhancing festive activities, I advocate for the importance of leisure and celebration, even on Sundays.
The ghost's actions symbolize the positive impact of allowing the poor to enjoy their free time, contrasting with the restrictive Sabbatarian practices that would limit such enjoyment. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. We explored the rich socio-historical context of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, examining how Dickens' own life experiences with poverty and his concern for the working class influenced the narrative. We discussed the significant themes of poverty and the Industrial Revolution, analysing how Dickens critiques the harsh realities of workhouses and the attitudes of the wealthy. Additionally, we looked at the transformation of Christmas in Victorian society and how Dickens used his novella to popularise its festive traditions and challenge rigid religious practices. Well done for completing all comprehension lessons for A Christmas Carol. You have now earned the Clever Comprehender badge, which you can view in your dashboard.